Welcome and thank you for tuning to NeptuneKnives. So first, we would like to thank Darkchild 57, Defense and Safety, Knife Lover 1225, Half Moon 67, Ormoto, Peter Moore, Pavlov Sandor, all for doing shoutouts and mentioning our channel. Now, if you've been following the series on locking mechanisms, we've already covered that frame locks and liner locks are pretty finicky things. They got a lot of room for error, lots of intricacies to the design for them to work right. This video, then we're going to be discussing the axis locks, the bolt lock, and the cage one, and we'll leave lockbacks for another day. I'm going to let you guys know right off the bat, I have a bias against Benchmade, and that bias pretty much stems from my experience owning the Osborne axis. You know, and you've watched my video, there's the reasons why. And you know, my reasons aren't unfounded, but just understand that coming into this video, there's that, and then there's just my love of choils. You know, my belief that all folding knives can fail, of course, because they all have a limit. Some point something gives. So, you know, I always feel a choil is necessary, and most of the axis locks on Benchmade don't have that. We're going to go over the springs and the design, but the main thing is just, I never liked that Benchmade didn't give credit to the people who made the designs, the locks. Like Spyderco, you know, will acknowledge that this is the Blackie Collins bolt lock, and Benchmade renames them. For example, Bradley Cutlery has Benchmade produce the Alias, which is sort of a copy of the Chris Reeve Sebenza, and you know, just to me that just doesn't seem right. And so I've never really liked, you know, the Benchmades, and Spyderco as a company I've always just personally felt is just more, you know, honorable. So now that factors into it, but we're going to look primarily at the axis locks and the bolt lock and the real structural differences, which is superior. Let's mention a little bit about Blackie Collins. Now, if you go on the forums and stuff, Blackie Collins, first he started in like the 60s. He was the founder of Blade magazine until he sold that. He found during the time when handles and knife sheaths were being made out of different materials, he founded companies and sold those to Fisker, which owns Gerber. He was introduced into the Cutlery Hall of Fame in 1996. He also partnered with Bill Meyer to create Meyer Co., the knife company Meyer Co. And Blackie Collins holds over 60 patents on knife mechanisms, and also among many other ones for cutlery products. And he recently died just in a motorcycle accident. But the thing is, you can tell he was a very big entrepreneur. He had written books, and he had been in this industry for a long time. So he created the bolt lock. Now the axis locks was created by two other individuals. I can't remember their name actually, but the point is, to me, it is a simpler version of the bolt lock. In some ways, it's a simpler construction to do. And here is a Benchmade Osborne axis taken apart, and that is the axis lock. Now, okay, is the axis lock stronger than the frame lock? You might want to say it's more consistent, more simple in design to implement, because of, if you watch the previous videos, how difficult frame locks are to do. You know, I believe still in Striders. You know, I think that depending on how the lockout cutout is done, hinders, I think those knives can hold it. And if you're holding the knife too, I think that really can assist that lock. Because and that's what we're going to have to look at. All these tests, and Benchmade claims this goes up to 200, and if you go on to Spyderco forums, Sal Glasser himself says that they tested the axis locks, and it matches up with the cage ball lock, which and the compression lock. But the point is, which is roughly 200 pounds. And you can tell, like when a lock has nowhere to go, like that Paramilitary 2, what happened was it actually bent that compression lock bar, that little liner. It actually like bent the metal. And watch that video. Is this stronger than the Paramilitary 2? I would say yes, because now you're looking at, for this to unlock, well, it would have to either somehow disengage, or it would be pushing up against these liners and digging into the liners, and even then it would just bend it until some point where something else snapped. Sharpsteers had a Manix 2 in which you would disengage, and Jenkerson, if you watch his YouTube channel, has the same thing where he does spine wax on Manix 2s and they disengage quite easily with that. But the Manix 2 is tested by Sal to hold 200 pounds, and it could do other things. It just specifically couldn't handle the impact like a strike against the back of the blade tank. That's going to get into this little car that I got here, and that pound power equals force times distance thing, the idea of moving force. But before all that, let's do some comparisons. Now first, everyone out there, the YouTube videos, okay, this is an awesome knife, and I really hope that everyone out there supports it by getting one, or just, you know, telling Sal that it's great, because I mean, we really need this kind of knife, this kind of product. You know, you see it sitting here, and if you don't know anything about knives, you know, okay, but you gotta look at Sal and Blackie Collins. You know, they've been around for a long time, and if this is what they came up with, and this is what they think should be, you know, this is something you have to look deeper into to really appreciate. I mean, if you watch all our videos, you know, there's no words, you need any words to explain the impressiveness of this. But I'm going to break it down still anyway to show you. Because everyone says that the Stage 2 and the Stage 3 are identical, just the locking mechanism. There's a dramatic difference, which is the original 4 centimeters wide on the Sage 2, while the Sage 3 is 4.5 centimeters wide. And you can tell if you really look carefully, they don't look the same. Not only is that cutout up there, which would make you think then that blade is a little bit bigger, but the overall, and it's hard I guess to see on film, you see the spire hole sticking out? It grew in size because they had to implement all the locking mechanism parts of the bolt lock. So it also is just ever so slightly, I measured this, just ever so slightly longer. I think it's like just barely, by a couple millimeters. Okay, so the blades are the same size, but as you get towards the actual handle of the knife, where it's thinnest, let's see, for example, on the Sage 2, we have about 7/8 of an inch, while on this Blackie Collins you have closer to 1 inch exact. You know, and especially down here, towards the bulk of the handle, you have 1 1/4, a little bit over, and here you have 1 1/8. So that's the first thing. If you were to hold both, you should notice that the Sage 3 fills the hand in much better than the Sage 2. Okay, so they both have the same thickness roughly, but in terms of this width, the Sage 3 is thicker. I don't know if you guys can see this or not. Let's see if we can. I mean, it's visible right there. There's a bump down here. The handle curves more and bulges out right here more. So what that means is this. So, you know, for all tactical knives, you know, like this M1 Combative Edge, what it does is when it's flat, what it does right is it gives you width here so that when you're holding it, you know, it doesn't move your hand because it's filling in your hand. This one, it fills it up here. This one, missing that portion up here, fills it down here. So in many ways, if you ever held Strato PT, it feels like a gunner grip. It sits into your palm, and it just provides lots of lateral, like, you know, any twisting resistance. So you can apply leverage very well when cutting with this because you can keep the knife from doing this. So this knife, to me now, has really shot up to one of my favorites. Now originally the Sage 2, as I had mentioned, is kind of like one of my favorite tactical knives. Once you give it some of the issues though were that it's slippery. This part's slippery and this part slips when your hands are wet. It's very difficult to pull out of your pocket. And that, you know, when you wave it all together, but, you know, and some people will say that, you know, that it can disengage from them accidentally disengaging with their hand. And so where this one then picks that up is this one fixes all that. Now this one has the G10, so it's grippy. It fills in the hand better, so it locks even more. And compared to the Paramilitary 2, when we tested it, you know, if our hands are wet and we're holding Paramilitary 2 or Hinder or the Sage 3 is the one that locks in, really locks in. And now being also that it has this this bolt action lock, you can do the wrist flick. So the final aspect is now you have this ultra strong lock. One of the I guess you would say the top of locking mechanisms, and that's what I was saying. For production level, you're getting, this is really good. Okay, so the construction is the same thing. It's 3 screws, all the same size. You just torque, same as the old Sage. Same wire pot clip that can kind of bend around, and you can move it around. When you grip it, kind of squishes around and stuff. But it's good because the lightweight, overall flat profile keeps it in your pocket and keeps it from twisting or turning in your pocket. So it always is kind of very reliable in that aspect. And of course, you can flick it open many ways. And now the bolt lock is definitely more stiff than a Benchmade axis lock, but that's a good thing because I mean, you want a strong lock. You know, you just get used to it. Actually, being made in Taichung, Taiwan, if you've been following too, these are manufactured very well, very high tolerances. So far, each one I've held has had no blade play. It's an unbelievable solid feeling. I can't explain it to you. There's no side up and down. It feels so incredibly rigid, and it is because once we see the inside, you'll know why. If you take into mind, let's say for example, this was a 2,000-pound car, and it was sitting there. There's a friction that it has that makes it stay connected to the ground and not start to roll or move around and stuff. And it could be 5,000 pounds, and it's going to sit there until unless of course it tilts on the hill or something. But now you look at like when a car goes around a turn, just that sudden motion of turning. If you took that 2,000-pound car and made it go around a corner at 10 miles per hour or something, it's going to start to break loose and start sliding. And that's what can happen with the caged ball lock. You see, because the idea is this. Now, a custom knife maker from 3 Sisters Forge, Jim, he was saying that he wants ultimately his stop pin to be square. The face where the blade hang and the stop pin meet to be square and flush, completely flush, so that more surface area is contacting. And that's kind of like why, like a frame lock, perhaps like a Chris Teresa Benza, you have that maximum amount of coverage, like on the Hinder is a better example. That maximum amount of contact between the blade tang and the lock bar surface, so there's more traction. And when you have that caged ball lock, you have one small, basically point of a round surface touching the back of the blade tang. So of course now, if you just hang it statically and just hang the weight, like Sal says, it'll work. It'll hold tons of force before that ball, which is the next problem, is that the ball can roll like a ball. It'll roll and unlock. Now what happens is once you add a bit of motion to that, just like that car, when you add some distance and time to the equation, there's other forms where they talk about the axis lock, where they were testing it and it would lock up fine, but when you did any kind of motions where you twisted or anything, it could disengage. Now, I have not tested that, but it's something that you have to realize that what Sharpster was telling me is that when we send it back to Spyderco, they had sent it back and ground the ball, the back of the blade more to make more contact with the ball, the caged ball. And so basically there's that point where there's too much friction buildup, like when a car goes fast around a corner, that the wheels will lose traction because of that. And so basically, because it's one of Newton's laws of physics. But the point is, same thing can happen with any lock. Now, the best way to prevent that is, one, of course, to have it be solid and be more force pushing, the lock in, and then to compress it, helps too. And so Sal, created that compression lock, and Benchmade's axis and the bolt lock all are compression lock devices, to where you have something in the back of the blade tang that sits in the back, and it's pinned up against the top of the knife handle or a stop pin. If there's a stop pin right here, and the bolt goes underneath it, I'm going to show you. Then when this opens, the bolt is stuck between the blade tang and the stop pin, just like it is on the compression lock. And what you get is that then pinching effect. So then you just have to look at what else may snap. And so that's why for me I prefer the Spyderco, because this has a very solid lateral, meaning it feels very solid together this way. And I know that the pivots are a little bit more, to me, on Spyderco's compared to some of the smaller Benchmades, a little bit stronger.